One day I hope to be able to talk like Elizabeth. And I wish that I could just say everything without having to read from what I prepared and tell you everything I want to say, but I don't want to leave anything out. So I could do like this if you want. or- Woof. Are we there? That is bitch. Now, who said hummus? We had this talk yesterday. It's hummus. Hummus. You can say that when you don't have food in your mouth. Otherwise, you'll choke. So thank you for that really great introduction. And before I start crying, so 2 months ago, I came back from 14 months in Israel. I was there to study Arabic and to do a graduate degree program in peace and conflict management. For over 10 years, I'd been working from home, developing businesses, doing reflexology, volunteering, and most recently consulting. First, because I wanted to stay home with my kids while they were young, and then because it didn't make sense to work outside just to pay for daycare. Though I was keeping myself busy by doing these things, I wasn't making any money to speak of, and it wasn't growing. This life slowly became irritating, dull, frustrating, maddening. Before I was married, I graduated from college magna cum laude. I speak 5 languages, 3 of them fluently. I lived in the Netherlands, Israel, Italy. I used to rescue and rehabilitate dolphins and whales for fun. Don't get me wrong, I chose my life and I loved it for a while. I have 4 incredibly talented, smart, beautiful, fun kids, and I'm so grateful for this. I'm glad I did what I did. But things got to a point where I felt like I'd lost my own identity. I had become mom and nothing else. Even my husband calls me Ima, which is mom in Hebrew. My life revolved around dinner and snacks, birthdays and holidays, school events, illnesses and injuries, and nagging, lots and lots of nagging. I felt like I'd been this person who used to win awards and was constantly recognized for achievements, and then now I was leading a life where I was trying my best, and no matter what, someone was always unhappy with me. I became angry and resentful. I wanted out. I knew, however, that the way out was to go in. I knew that everything that was going on in my life that I didn't like was pointing me towards looking for a solution, looking inside myself, really listening to what it was that I did want. And after a year of some serious soul searching, I knew what it was. I wanted to go back to school. I always liked school, and I love Israel. So when I started looking at programs in peace studies, and the University of Haifa in Israel was the first to show up, I could hardly believe it, and was totally unsurprised. I didn't know that they had a program there, although it makes sense because Israel has been in conflict since like forever. So I looked at different programs in many different countries, but this was the only one that was a year long rather than 2 or more, and it was in Israel. I love Israel. I knew I had to go there, but how? 4 kids, no extra money. They'd have to be in aftercare, $800 a month during school, twice that in the summer, plus tuition, fees, airfare, rent, food, everything. We were just making our bills as it was. But I had to go. I knew I had to go. So I applied to school and for a number of private foundation scholarships that I didn't get. And then I found Rotary. I'd heard of Rotary, but I thought it was just a business networking club or something. I had no idea that they are much, much more than that. Rotary offers global grants for people who want to do projects or scholarship in areas of their interest. Peace and conflict studies is one of those areas. I applied for a global grant and after 3 months of making presentations at dozens of Rotary meetings all around Florida, they raised the money for me and approved the grant. They paid for all of my expenses related to my program. We made a deal with my kids' school to reduce our costs for daycare, and everything else worked out. Lesson. When you're on a path that excites you, hold the vision and don't worry about the details. Take one step at a time, and the way opens up for you. I was so excited about going to Israel, getting a master's degree, being back in school, and the potential opportunities I would have in the field. Working towards a solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been something I have been wanting to do since my first trip in Israel in 1988 when I got stoned. I mean, I was on a bus that got stoned by Palestinians. Dreaming about classrooms and field trips and that coveted degree, I couldn't wait. And then I freaked out. What if something happened to my kids when I was gone? What if something happened to me? What if they never forgave me for leaving them for a year? What if we lost that strong relationship we had built? What if they hurt each other because I wasn't there to mediate or medicate? It was really difficult. It was almost unbearable, the what ifs. What let me know that I absolutely could not give up this chance were my feelings about myself. I was starting to hate my life, but I was really starting to hate myself. I loved my kids, but I hated the way I was treating them. I convinced myself that I had to go. If not for me, then for them. I wasn't being the mother I wanted to be. I wasn't crying when I read this to myself earlier. I was feeling so uncomfortable in my own skin, knowing that I was more than I was allowing myself to be, but so caught up in the drama of my own unsatisfying life that I couldn't find myself in what I saw as like the mess. I had to get away so that I could go find myself again. And all the other stuff, the degree, the opportunities, the experiences, those were side benefits. What I needed most was to get a new perspective, and I had to leave in order to do that. Even with all of this, I couldn't have left if I didn't know that my husband would take great care of my kids and that my dear friends would be there to help him and me. And they were. So last July, after a beautiful shamanic send-off, I boarded a plane. Being back in Israel was great. I had missed the sights. Can everybody see?
Yeah.
The smells, the food. By the way, I'm at low battery. Oh, yeah, that's why it's not going anywhere. This isn't food. That's my daughter Ellie, who came to visit. Stop. And I missed Hebrew. I moved into a dorm apartment already inhabited by 4 Arab Israelis. Great, a chance to practice my Arabic, I thought. Yeah, well, the Arabic I learned is literary and very different from spoken Arabic. I can read street signs, but I can't really hold on a conversation. Cultural differences immediately showed up. After trying to negotiate for weeks with my new roommates on matters of hygiene and noise, I moved to another flat, this one. Lesson. Forcing people with different cultures to share space doesn't always work. The first month of intensive Arabic was followed by 6 weeks of no classes at all. During that time, I hiked, spent time in the desert, met people working for peace in the region, free every Wednesday. And made new friends. Classes started in October, and I took 5 the first semester. One of these was Model United Nations, by far the most interesting and useful class of all. I was asked to contribute to the graduate student blog and to write an article for a political science magazine, and was invited to represent Israel at an international Model UN conference in Germany, all expenses paid. I won awards and was given a scholarship for my grades that I hadn't even applied for. I was again receiving kudos for my efforts and recognition for my intellect. People called me Jennifer and knew who I was. Of course, I missed my kids. We spoke almost every day before they went to school and had Skype meetings now and then. In December, I used my scholarship money to fly home for 2 weeks and surprise them. They were all doing really well. They had developed a good relationship with their dad and with each other. They didn't fight, or I didn't notice. My 9-year-old son said to me after a few days, "Mom, I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but you're really nice now." I felt so calm. The house was filthy and their rooms were a mess, but I didn't care. I was just there to enjoy them. I wasn't there to nag. In the spring, I volunteered for an organization in the Galilee that arranges meetings between local Arabs and Jews in order to facilitate dialogue and relationships through ecological, artistic, and culinary workshops. The founders are parents of a young man who was blown up on a bus when a suicide bomber sat next to him. He and his father had already been working towards coexistence. He was lead singer in a protest band, and his dad worked on joint Arab-Israeli community projects, Arab-Jewish community projects. After Omri was killed in 2002, his parents worked even harder to bring Arabs and Jews together, feeling that this was the only way to make the world safer for their other children and grandchildren. I also volunteered for an organization that worked to better social conditions in a poor mixed neighborhood in Akko. The project I worked on there was liaising with the US Embassy to bring American graffiti artists to town. The artists talked with the young Arab and Jewish kids about their hopes and dreams, and together they painted their vision as a mural on a bomb shelter turned after-school community center. And that's not finished. I took classes on political Islam, paths to peace, and the Arab Spring, or as one professor likes to call it, the Islamic Awakening. In Germany at the Model UN conference, I spent 8 days with 4 other delegates from Israel, 3 Arabs and a Jew. During the conference, we attended social events in the evenings, and this was where the real peacemaking happened. My committee included a girl from India, 2 guys from Pakistan, and 2 of us from Israel. At our first evening social, one of the Pakistani guys said to us, "I've never met a Jew before. I never met an Israeli before. I didn't know Arabs lived in Israel. My country doesn't recognize your country, but I recognize you," and held out his hand. On the last day of the conference, his delegation from Pakistan insisted on taking photos with our Israeli delegation with our flags. We have one photo with the 6 of us clearly having a good time together, all from countries sworn to hate each other. I don't know can you read that caption? happened. But we got kicked out because we didn't have a tie. THAI, tie. Lesson. The people don't necessarily represent their representatives. I met some amazing people this past year. Genevieve. Genevieve emigrated to Israel a few years ago from Alabama. She did the same program at the university that I did, and as part of her internship project, she turned the poorest Arab village into a tourist attraction. She's created many programs for high school students in the village, and as a result, one of the kids has been offered a scholarship to go to medical school in Romania. Before meeting Genevieve, he was planning to drop out of school and would probably have joined the majority of the men in the village doing drugs and fighting. For the past 2 years, he's been leading tourists through the village, having learned English as one of Genevieve's programs. I had heard about Genevieve from a number of unrelated sources, and she still doesn't accept that she's a known figure in peace circles in Israel. Charles. Oh, I wish you could see this clearer. That's better. Charles came to the university on a year abroad program in peace studies after meeting Genevieve in Alabama. He is so cool that people actually stop him on the street and ask to take photos with him, and I'm not kidding. Charles is a filmmaker, and he agreed to work with me to make a short film highlighting the various ways in which Arabs and Jews in Israel work, study, and play together regularly with no hint of animosity. We both wanted to offer a look at what we see when we're there, something that the media doesn't usually portray. Charles is back in Alabama now, editing the footage for our film. The ladies of Ol Nul. Ol and Nul both mean light. Ol in Hebrew, Nul in Arabic. These ladies are a mixture of Muslims, Christians, and Jews who live together in Haifa and get together at least, they don't live together, but they live in Haifa. They get together at least once a month, usually at somebody's house, but also for events or gallery openings, things like that. They started this group as a way to get to know the other, but have developed into very good friends. I've been in touch with an interfaith group in Israel for over 15 years, and when I asked them if they had a women's group in Haifa, they introduced me to Ol Nul. One meeting we made a quilt, each woman designing her own square. And as it turns out, a few weeks ago, that quilt was hanging in Jerusalem in front of the Parliament House for the beginning of the opening sessions for the year. Of course, these aren't the only amazing people I met this year, but I wanted to tell you about them. So I've done these things and I've met these people, but what have I learned? I learned that it's never too late to go after your dreams. I had wanted to continue studying after my bachelor's degree, but other things took priority until they didn't anymore. Being back at school was fun and exciting and stimulating. In Germany, as part of the Model UN conference, there was a workshop on getting a job with the UN. As it turns out, the most sought after candidate is a woman in her 40s with life experience. I may have been the only one hooting in the audience when they said that, but it's nice to know that I'm still sought after. It's just Mom, I wouldn't have known that. I learned that when there's a will, there's a way. Yes, it's a cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. I didn't know that Rotary was a possibility, but I knew how to go do this thing. As I took each step, one at a time, the next one appeared. I knew this deep down, but sometimes you have to get these reminders. And I have to admit, it was important for me to model this for my children, especially my girls. Before I left, many women approached me and asked me how I could even consider going abroad and leaving my 4 children behind without them coming with me. My usual response was that men do it all the time and nobody questions it. And it was funny that when I was in Israel and women there found out that I had 4 children at home in the US, they usually said, "Good for you." And the men said, "Can you come talk to my wife?" I learned that peacemaking comes in many different forms. I knew that Israel wasn't the violent and dangerous place that the media portrays because I'd lived there before. But what I didn't know was that Arabs and Jews mingle in many more places than on the battlefield. With all the other times I'd lived in Israel, I've been there many times, and this was my 5th extended stay, I had never before interacted with Arabs. I had seen them, and I knew they were people like everybody else, but I feared them. Now I can say that I have several close Arab friends, and I know that what I had suspected was true. Meeting people face to face is one of the most important things we can do to increase our security. And that's another thing that I learned. When people say they want world peace, usually what they mean is that they want world security. Peace you can only have with yourself. Security is what you arrange with others. So I have peace after meeting people and letting go of fear. I have security when we shake hands and recognize each other. So now what? I've been back for 2 months, and last week I completed my final graduation project and submitted it, but I'm not done. I'm back at home with my kids, and I'm Ima, but I'm also Jennifer. I found Jennifer in Israel, and I have no intentions of losing myself again. I'm going to Washington, D.C. in 2 weeks to meet face-to-face with foreign policy advisors, university professors, and others, because I want to do what I've wanted to do all along. I want to be actively engaged in working with people who are also interested in increasing world security. I don't know the details of how it's going to happen, but I've learned some lessons. When you're on a path that excites you, hold the vision and don't worry about the details. Take one step at a time, and the way will open up for you. And although the recent election results have unsettled me, I know that people don't necessarily represent their representatives. And I'm going to go work with some of those people. My daughter Maya snapped a photo of me when I got off the plane from Israel. She put a caption on it that says, "She's finally here." Yes, Maya, she is.